And we don't have a Sadie Hawkins Day here in the Delaware Valley, but we have had snow. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, no matter where you are. Welcome to the Irv Homer Show. We apologize for not being available on Monday night, but there will be times that it will be impossible for me because of social commitments or business commitments not to do the program. We're trying to get fill-ins for me, but believe it or not, folks, there's a lot of people that are just bashful and shy, and you may be one of those people when you realize that many people do not call talk radio, but they listen. Why are people so shy? Why are people afraid to get up at a school board meeting and voice an opinion, get up at a join organizations, and the same people talk over and over again? I don't understand it, ladies and gentlemen. I know it takes a lot of courage, I suppose, to stand in front of an audience and speak or deliver a point of view or talk about something, and I know many people are shy, but it just absolutely boggles my mind when radio stations that do talk radio have to actually screen the callers and tell them you can't call more than once a week or once every month while there are thousands of people listening to the program. Well, we do this program, ladies and gentlemen, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights, as it is possible to do, and I appreciate those folks who are concerned about me not doing the program Monday night. Last minute emergency came up and just didn't have the time to do it. We're broadcasting from irvhomer.com. The website is www.irvhomer.com. My email address is evilirv@irvhomer.com. And we become aware, ladies and gentlemen, that there is an email address circulating on the internet that has nothing to do with me. I don't know who it is. I have no connection with these people. And we will try to trace it out. We have sent an email to this email address, but haven't received a response yet.
Nope.
If you see anything or a email address at irvhomerradio@live.com, once again, let me repeat, irvhomerradio@live.com. It has nothing to do with me. There's nothing to do with Ron, the producer of this program. We don't know who it is. We don't know what emails they're sending out. We don't know what kind of responses they're doing, what kind of information they're giving out. I have no knowledge of whatsoever. However, if it continues, I will go to the district attorney of Doylestown and file a formal complaint if what I am hearing is true, and will conduct a criminal investigation to get to the bottom. Whoever is using Irv Homer Radio at live.com, I would suggest, and this is not a threat, I'm not a vengeful guy, but I would suggest you stop it. So once again, any email that originates from Irv Homer Radio at live.com is not from me. I have no idea who they are, what they're doing, what their purpose is, whether they're angry with me or not. That everyone has a right to get angry, but at least let the public know that I do not know who they are, what they are, or what the purpose of it is. The comment that I had, I was going to go into this a little later in the program, but I am a thinker and I listen to shortwave radio overnight. I'm a very poor sleeper, and I think of things. And Bill from Northeast Philly, and you can get on our chat room and ask questions. You can avail yourself of our telephone at 215-253-8877, 215 where's my phone number? Yes, live phone number is 215-253-8877.
Yes.
You can call in that number if you so desire, 215-253-8877, or get on our chat room. This afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, on my regular broadcast from WBCB Radio, 1490 AM, at 1 o'clock from 1 to 2, I revealed something that I am going my best with a limited facilities. I do not have a big staff of investigation. I don't have the time or the desire. But something came to me, and I'm going to throw it out tonight for your consideration. I believe that there are certain things as conspiracies. There are a lot of conspiracies that have no merit. There are a lot of conspiracies that do develop into meritorious investigation. But Bill in Northeast Philadelphia from the chat room says, Irv, I heard you ask what financial records were housed in the World Trade Center. Were the Enron records not housed in the World Trade Center 7? And were they backed up? Bill of Northeast Philadelphia. Well, Bill, the question that I posed today on my program, and I'll pose it tonight. The World Trade Center, 9/11/01, contained about 12,000 employees, all kind of computers, all kind of business. Who knows what was in the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers? But it said the World Trade Center. So apparently somewhere in the World Trade Center, there was an awful lot of information that was destroyed. And no one, to the best of my knowledge, has ever brought this up on talk radio, television, or news stories. And I am just wondering, ladies and gentlemen, as a result of what is happening in the world today, where the entire world is broke. We're broke. Everybody is fighting for a piece of the pie. Did the terrorists, in destroying the World Trade Center, destroy irrevocable, not irrevocable, but irretrievable computer records that were in the World Trade Center? What was destroyed there? And are we now feeling the effects of the destruction of the information that was housed in the World Trade Center in the devastation of 9/11? What companies were in there? The name of the companies, the number of employees, what those companies were doing. I'm not saying it was corruption. I'm not saying it was illegal. But the devastation of the destruction of those buildings is incredible. And if there was a void of information and a void of transactions of business, and if there was international communications and commerce and finances and social structures and military, I don't know what was in there. But it seems to me that there is a very strong possibility, and I don't know for sure, I'm just throwing this out for you to review my feelings. Are we now suffering after a 7-year bubble? 9/11 of this year, 09, will be 8 years. Are we now suffering the total collapse of the world's financial structure because in the World Trade Center were irretrievable information in their computers, their hard copy, their emails, whatever was in that building had an awful lot of information, including, from what I understand, gold, valuables, possessions. So I'm wondering, and I throw this out to you tonight, Wednesday, February the 4th, do you think I'm on the right track in pursuing this investigation? Do you think you should call your congressmen, your senators, call talk radio? I guarantee you that this will pop up in about 2-3 weeks once this program gets on the archives tonight, and other talk show hosts I know review my website and review the archives. But this is a question I think deserves serious consideration. And if that left a void in the international world of finance, was that an opportunity for the terrorists, the financial terrorists, the computer terrorists, those people who really didn't care about killing 3,000 people, but wanted to create such financial havoc around the world and create so much competition for survival? Was that their ultimate goal? Now, computers are a very great asset to society. But computers are a terrific amount of liability and record keeping and misuse, as this thing is with this email address of Irv Homer Radio at live.com. Yes, Ron?
Part of our conversation this morning,
Right.
One thing I did forget, and I was reminded in the chat room, is that all the records should have been properly backed up. Now, in one of the things in a disaster recovery, you have procedures that you go by. Now, the biggest thing is that on a daily basis they do computer backups, and that backup should have been shipped at least 100 miles from that location in case of fire, disaster.
I understand
But
that
not always backups work properly. So if the backup did not work properly, then they might have had the problem.
Okay, now the backup on those, the information that you're referring to may have been backup on in storage of final conversation, final discussions. But what about the notes?
All the
of
hard,
proposals,
all the
of
physical
of
printout.
proposals that weren't printed out.
If they were never put onto digital files that
Right.
were stored at that location, they're gone.
And they're gone. And the assumption is, did everything have a backup, say 100 miles away? Or did they just assume that the World Trade Center was so safe that there was no reason to have a distant backup system, a distant computerized system someplace of all of the finances and all of the companies and all of the countries that were involved in the World Trade Center? Would they have these backup systems all over the world? So I think, ladies and gentlemen, without reservation, somewhere along the line, there should be a worldwide investigation of all the countries that had offices in the World Trade Center, with an international nonpartisan investigating police department, computers guys. I don't know what it is. I'm shooting in the dark because I'm not that knowledgeable. But a lot of information was destroyed in that World Trade Center, those 7 buildings. And if there was backups to it, fine. But were there backup systems? I don't know. We don't know. Nobody has ever brought this subject up on radio or television to the best of my knowledge. Now, there have been inklings and hints that I picked up on shortwave radio, where the possibility exists, not to the extent that I'm discussing it tonight, but the possibility does exist that somewhere along the line, the intent of destroying the World Trade Center was to destroy the financial status of the United States. Osama bin Laden just didn't blow up the World Trade Center because he wanted to blow up buildings in New York. Was there some type of international conspiracy against the United States that could have been disclosed in the World Trade Center? Was there an investigation going on by Interpol, the international police, in investigating some of the countries that were part and parcel of the offices that were in the World Trade Center, that certain countries, and I believe that the World Trade Center was blown up and destroyed by a state-sponsored terrorist? I don't believe that Osama bin Laden did this from a cave somewhere in Afghanistan or in Pakistan. I just don't believe it. The logistics, in my opinion, were too great to coordinate that terrorist attack on 9/11. Let us go to the website or to the chat room and get to some of the questions that are up there. If you have an idea or want to contribute to it or think I'm nuts, please feel free to say, hey, Irv, I think you're nuts. But when you look at this thing in detail, ladies and gentlemen, it poses a problem. You can't destroy officers of that magnitude and not suffer some type of loss of information, negotiations, contractual agreements of the magnitude of the World Trade Center. Question from Alan in Maple Shade. Maybe the Fed wanted those financial records destroyed so they can move this country closer to a cashless society. I don't think the Fed knows that much about anything other than how to put the American taxpayer in debt. This was not conducted by the Fed. This was conducted by a state, and I believe the state is Saudi Arabia. I don't think that Osama bin Laden did this on his own with a bunch of warriors. Of the 19 terrorists, 14 of them were Saudi Arabians. They weren't Afghans. Our next comment on the chat room is the real outrage was, if you watched PBS last night, was that the NSA was watching these bastards for 5 years before they carried out their terrorist acts. John Ruth. Well, this has been going on for a long period of time, John. And you're probably right that they were watching them. But Saudi Arabia was an ally. Even though they were housing terrorists, the Wahhabi religion of the Islam, nations of Islam are terrorists. They admit it. So I'm pretty sure that this thing just didn't hatch overnight. And with our, quote, oil barons in this country who have more of an allegiance to their oil investments in the Middle East and Saudi Arabia, I don't think they gave a damn. I really don't. You see, one of the problems, ladies and gentlemen, is today revealed that a gentleman who is in competition with Bernie Madoff and looking for financial investors went to the Security Exchange Commission after speaking with his boss and said, we can't compete with Bernie Madoff, the guy that allegedly ripped off $50 billion. Well, the $50 billion is a number that they pulled out of thin air. That is the amortized debt of Bernie Madoff. More like $20 billion, not that $20 billion is chump change. But when he went to the Security Exchange Commission, they ignored him. So that's competition. If he can pay 12, 15% interest on investments, you're going to have to do something in your financial status to be able to match his thing. Otherwise, there's nothing we can do. But he had blown the whistle. And according to this gentleman, who is in a competing financial firm, Madoff has been doing this since the Nixon administration. It wasn't something new. So my question to you, ladies and gentlemen, to think about it, get on our chat room, give us a call at 215-253-8877. And I posed the question, is it worth my time to make some inquiries with some people that I still know and who still respect my opinion as to whether or not there's any credibility as to my thoughts? The next question on our chat room, ladies and gentlemen, what information was there that day in a personal laptop or briefcase? I don't know. Who knows, my dear friend? We just don't know what information was destroyed in the World Trade Center. Now, the World Trade Center, from what I understand, had almost a 5-story underground complex after the 3 levels of the underground garages. And from information that I received today, there were special forces when the dust cleared who had special privileges, special permission after security checks to go into those vaults underground of the World Trade Center and retrieve whatever information they could get, whatever was stored there. But it just boggled my mind all night last night and all day today. I couldn't wait till I got on the air today to throw that out. Now, if we have computer whiz-bangs or people who deal in international finances or money exchange or currency exchange, please give us a buzz. Irv, have you ever heard of Promise software? This software is used to move trillions around the world, both authorized and unauthorized, for decades. Think of the government as one massive criminal machine. Google Promise software for eye-opener reports. Yes, I am familiar with it. And with instantaneous money transfers today, it can be done with the push of a button. And if you Google Promise software, you will get some eye-opening reports. There's no question about it. So if you tie all the loose ends together, it adds up to zero. Was there ever a list published? And I'm plain ignorant because I just don't know. Was there ever a list published of all the offices and what they did in those buildings? There are all kinds of conspiracies, my dear friends, that the government did it itself. It wanted its purposes, I don't know. We have plenty of conspiracy theorists that think it was an inside job, an example that the U.S. did it to itself. Well, I think the greatest conspiracy that I've heard, and I don't think that the United States did it to itself, although when these big boys get in trouble, they're capable of doing anything. You must remember, and this is not an anti-American statement, but I'm stating the truth. The National Guard in Ohio killed 4 students on the Kent State campus. The city of Philadelphia burnt down 61 homes and incinerated 11 Americans. Randy Weaver, his wife holding his baby, was shot and killed by the FBI. In Waco, Texas, we burnt to death 158 people. So, government is capable of doing some vicious things, and we've done them. But I doubt very much whether or not the World Trade Center destruction on 9/11 was a United States-sponsored act. To our chat room, Madoff only was offering 10% to his investors, not so much to make his claims non-credible, and not low enough that investors wouldn't bother with it. The testimony that the gentleman gave today was a little more than 10% to his investors. Although he may have offered 10%, he apparently gave them more. And as this investment counselor or broker said, his company, which was a legitimate, long-standing company, could not compete with the return on investments that Bernie Madoff was offering going back, as I said, to the Nixon administration. From the chat room on the Irv Homer Show, we're broadcasting from irvhomer.com. Website is www.irvhomer.com. We're emailing at evilirv@irvhomer.com. And let me remind you once again, ladies and gentlemen, there appears to be an email address under the name of Irv Homer Radio at live.com. On my website, on Google, on Facebook, wherever we're at, let it be known now, verbally on the program, I do not know who put this email address up. I do not know who they are. I don't know what information they're sending out. I don't know who's emailing things to them. But I would suggest that whoever is responsible for this, because I'm getting blamed for a lot of things that I never did, never said. And I don't like that. I can get in enough trouble with things that I really say. I don't need to get in trouble and aggravation from things that I never said. And so I would suggest that this thing be shut down immediately. Irv, we have people in this country who are involved with the Saudi government. This could not have been done by them without help. I agree. I agree that the Bush oil family, going back to the days of Prescott Bush, President Bush's grandfather, the Saudis have been friends. You remember the way President Bush was walking with one of the sheiks from Saudi Arabia, old buddy. I don't know. These people live in a different world than we do, my dear friend. Our next comment on the chat room: what put us into a downward world spiral is the extent to which our manufacturers started manufacturing other countries. Yes, my dear friend, I know that. It started in 1964. I've done programs on that for years of the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. The downward world spiral did not start because American companies moved out of the United States. It started the destruction of our manufacturing base. But to the countries where our companies moved to, it didn't start their downward spiral. It may have been the fact that the World Trade Center created a downward spiral around the whole world, because the whole world is suffering. What you are stating now is only the ones who have received notoriety. There are plenty of others. Well, certainly there are plenty of others. All you have to do is read the crime reports. There's swindlers all over the place. So that's not something that, is earth-shaking or earth-shattering. But these are the ones that have hit the big pay dirt. I read the paper in Bucks County. There's a guy with $5 million. Another one, I think, $10 million. So it's nothing new, my dear friend. Stories break any number of times in the paper. And certain stories grab me. And talk about a conspiracy, I suppose. I learned a long time ago, and questioned a long time ago, the Iraq-Afghan war. And why we have 160,000 private employees in Iraq and Afghanistan doing what the military used to do. And of course, everybody, wherever you're nuts, you're crazy. Well, the Vice President of the United States at that time was none other than Dick Cheney, who was the former head of Halliburton, who had to take a leave of absence when he became Vice President and put all his assets in trust. And I said, this is ridiculous. These are no bid contracts. The whole war financing was a fraud. And people thought I was crazy, and they rather talk about Madonna throwing her breast out or some other silly, stupid thing. And so what is happening now, ladies and gentlemen, as a result of Crazy Irving raising questions about the propriety of handing out no-bid contracts with what I consider to be mercenaries to fight the Iraq-Afghan war. Never discussed on television, on radio, never heard it, and I'm a freak when it comes to listening and reading. And so this week, ladies and gentlemen, some of the facts are coming out. Some of the facts that I stated a long time ago. A book was written that we discussed on the Irv Homer Show going back 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, called Corporate Warriors. And it was information about these no-bid contracts and how many billions of dollars we are spending with no bid. Need $1 billion? Yeah, we'll give you $2. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem. And I said, there's got to be somebody monitoring this. President wants another extension. Congress gave it to them. Democrats and Republicans. Need another $100 billion? Yeah, another $1 billion. Headline in this article says war spending spurs 154 criminal probes. 154 criminal probes at the present time, ladies and gentlemen, are going on right now investigating the fraud and the possible criminality of the financing of the Iraq-Iran war. Going on today, may I add. Our boys are still there and the private contractors are still there. Nobody paid attention to Irv Homer. He's just yelling and screaming, making noise. Well, there is a movement afoot to charge former President Bush, Donald Rumsfeld, and Dick Cheney, former Vice President of the United States, with criminality. And of course, the Bush apologists that you find on talk radio in America today are thinking they're crazy. But these investigations started under the Bush administration, not under the Obama administration. The Bush administration projected $2.4 billion would be needed for reconstruction of Iraq and Afghanistan. The total right now, ladies and gentlemen, is $54 billion. $50 billion more than the Bush administration projected to rebuild Iraq, and growing. Poor planning, weak oversight, and greed combined to soak U.S. taxpayers and undermine American forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. Government watchdogs tell a new commission examining waste and corruption in wartime contracts. Since 2003, the Pentagon, State Department, and the U.S. Agency for International Development have paid private contractors more than $100 billion for goods and services to support war operations and rebuilding. There are 154 open criminal investigations into allegations of bribery, conflicts of interest, defective products, bid rigging, theft stemming from the wars, according to the Pentagon's Principal Deputy Inspector General, Thomas Kimball. I screamed about this 15 years ago. One of my dear listeners, Polly, who has done any number of research for me and has made me aware of things that I missed, alerted me to this fact about 15 years ago. Did anybody in talk radio pay attention to it? No. Did any of my listeners pay attention to it? No. Did any of them call their senators or congressmen? No. But the Pentagon itself now, the Pentagon Deputy Inspector General, Thomas Kimball, who was the Pentagon's Principal Deputy Inspector General under the Bush administration, is the Inspector General. And so will President Barack Obama grant amnesty if it comes to the conclusion that there was criminal conspiracy in the Bush administration in spending this type of money? And I guarantee you many of the people in America, oh no, he was a good president, he saved us from the terrorists, ba-ba, ba-bee, ba-boo. 154 criminal probes, ladies and gentlemen, is not chump change. So should the president ex-president, vice president, Donald Rumsfeld, and the neocons of the Bush administration be called to testify before these hearings at the Pentagon? What has been the cost of this war, and has it affected the depreciation of American business in this country? It is so mind-boggling over the vacuous conversation that is on radio today. It blows my mind. For example, for those of you who are familiar with my background, one of my biggest adversaries in radio has been the Internal Revenue Service. Their methods of intimidating and frightening and scaring the American people. And have been involved in many cases in which I have a briefcase full, sitting over here, of communications from the Internal Revenue Service basically saying, Irving, it's none of your business. When we do an investigation into a citizen, under the Privacy Act, it is confidential. And no information is available to anyone. Now, we have just had 3 people appointed to 3 federal jobs, Daschle being the latest one, former senator, and their Internal Revenue Service records have been revealed that they didn't pay their taxes. Why did the IRS break the confidentiality on the 3 appointees that were to serve in the Barack Obama administration unless the president ordered them to do it, because the IRS comes under the executive branch of government. It doesn't come under the judicial branch or under the legislative branch. The IRS is under the direction of the executive branch of the United States government, which is the President of the United States. So who blew the whistle? Who in the Internal Revenue Service released the status of these taxpayers' confidential, private information? I would like to know. I personally don't care, ladies and gentlemen, whether they lock up all of the Congress and all of the Senate. What I'm concerned about is your privacy and my privacy. If we make an honest mistake and we have to pay a fine, or if we have to pay a penalty, it's nobody's business. Where did the confidentiality of the Internal Revenue Service come from to reveal the problems? Not that we shouldn't know, we should know. And under what guidelines, what rule, what executive order does the IRS have permission to reveal your tax return? Or any litigation that you may be involved in with the Internal Revenue Service? And the blatant ignorance of those folks that are on radio and television today is obvious when they don't pose the question that I just posed right now. And I think that under no circumstances should those people serve in government that has the power to confiscate our taxes. But I'm talking about the confidentiality of the IRS and why I know about it. I don't know about you if you have a problem with the IRS, and I should know about it. You should know about mine. If there is a conviction a criminal conviction, then I say yes. But in litigation back and forth where you claim one thing on your tax return, the IRS says no, it isn't true, and you're involved in litigation, until that case is resolved to the satisfaction of both the IRS and you and your accountant, it is nobody's business, and it should not be made public. To the chat room we go. I have been blowing the whistle on a local and state agency for 2 years now, and I'm getting similar response to what, I will not mention that name because I'm not familiar with it, got in the Nadoff situation. His name is Nadoff, not Madoff, Arlene. Well, it's one of the problems that we have. If you have factual information, if you know for a fact that there is stealing, corruption going on, you would assume that there would be agencies that are interested in looking into the complaints that you have. We cannot just assume that people are guilty. To the chat room, looks like Obama is also now doing the Washington two-step. Sounds like we have some expensive problems ahead of us, not only overseas, but here at home regarding how our tax money is spent. There's no question about it. There's no question about it, my dear friend. Everybody in government feels that they have responsibility to a certain group of people. The poor, the indigent, the elderly, kids going to college, rich people. Everybody wants a piece of the pie. But what you're seeing now is a diminution of the popularity of Barack Obama from 83% now down to 71%. And it will continue to drop. Continue to drop. Because now campaign promises are over and the reality sets in. Those people on the Democrat side feel that they've got the right answer with the stimulus package and the bailout. Although the president did admit last night, and I'll use his terms, I think I screwed up. Well, Mr. Obama, we didn't elect you to screw up. We didn't give you the power to spend $300-some billion to screw up. We had enough screw-ups in the last 8 years. And Barack Obama may go down after 4 years as being the worst president we have ever had, who was elected because the Republicans put up such a shallow candidacy with John McCain and with the wolf shooter from airplanes, Sarah Palin, that the Democrats really didn't win, but you dumb Republicans, you lost. We were looking for something from the Republican Party, at least I was, of some merit to reverse the posture of the Bush administration. But instead you picked John McCain out of all of the people of merit and quality in the Republican Party, and he picked the doofus from Alaska. You're a nice lady, Sarah. Raise your kids and run Alaska. You don't belong in the vice presidency. You just ain't got it, kid. And that's why you Republicans lost. And with Steele, Michael Steele going in as the head of the Republican National Committee was the worst thing you ever did. What are you trying to do? Let's pick a black as the head of the Republican National Committee and we'll upstage the black president of the United States. That's how desperate the Republican Party, not that Michael Steele is not qualified to be the head of the Republican National Committee, but you're so damn obvious in your selection that you nauseate me more than the Democrats do. Mary from Lenai. Irv, all around us, people are either losing their jobs or being taken down to a 4-day week. Their health insurance, they are stopping, matching, and having people go to a higher deductible. Can you give us an opinion on what is happening in a whole in our country? Yes, Mary, I'll tell you what's happening. We're going bankrupt. We're going bankrupt. It started years ago in 1964 when I was on a little radio station, then moving over to a major market station. As I watched, and I'm older than most of you folks out there, I watched American industry leave the United States. Nobody gave a rat's ass. Nobody cared. I'm screaming like a nutcase. I'm saying that Philco Ford left Philadelphia. The hosiery mills went to South America. The cigar companies moved out of Philadelphia. We don't build ships here. They had to subsidize Kverner at the Philadelphia Navy Yard to build ships. So we had to buy steel from Sweden because we didn't even have a steel mill in America. Screamed and yelled about it like a nutcase on the air. And I have no sense right now why the hell I'm doing this thing, other than aggravating myself every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night. But the big question is, are things bad? The Super Bowl last Sunday certainly didn't look like people were broke. The casinos don't look like things are broke. They cry that they're losing 2%, 3% of the revenue, but in the meantime, Philadelphia Park, within walking distance from where I'm broadcasting, did $1.3 billion. Now the governor of Pennsylvania wants to put slot machines in bars, restaurants, liquor stores, go-go joints. I don't know where else that he hangs out. Because he knows how stupid you are. You want something for nothing. And so instead of the government trying to get these companies back into America, he's letting you gamble. I wish you luck. And that's not a direct slur to you. It's an editorial statement. We're broadcasting from IrvHomer.com. My website is www.irvhomer.com. Email is evilirv@irvhomer.com. And I go back to what I said earlier. When friends of mine say, Irv, did you read this? I said, yeah, 30 years ago I talked about it. 20 years ago I talked about it. 10 years I talked about it. Been screaming about it for years on radio. So I end up broadcasting on the internet, and Rush Limbaugh gets $110 million a year for his pomposity and bullshit. Well, that's what the people want, and that's what you've got. You've got it on radio and television and news, and you've got it in government, because you want it. And Limbaugh will give you what you want. Misinformation, disinformation. And all of the other talk show hosts, both liberal and conservative, will give you what you want. Bullshit. You don't want information. You don't want to learn anything. The public don't give a damn as long as they got their beer, they got their football, they got their McDonald's. I don't care. And government will give you the things that you want anytime you want it. So you'll get more gambling. We should legalize drugs. We should legalize prostitution. We should legalize everything that the people want and then tax them for it. Why shouldn't there be legalized prostitution? And I've said this to district attorneys. There's 2 cars parked on a street. There's sex going on in the one car, and the woman's not charging the man. It's a love sex. In this car, there's also sex being performed, but she's charging him. She gets locked up for being a prostitute. He gets his name in the paper, and these two go on their merry way for doing exactly the same thing, but there was no money involved. However, being in the bar business, I learned an awful lot about life. I had 3 hookers in my one bar, and they were professionals. And the Vice Squad tried to nail them every which way under the sun. I would like to know how many members of the Philadelphia Police Department Vice Squad had sex with them and couldn't arrest them. You know why? They had a card that was printed. And they said, your charitable contribution will be $25. And they gave her $25, and he couldn't bust her because it was a charitable contribution. What was he going to arrest her on? Prostitution? She didn't charge him. He gave her $25 for a charitable contribution. These gals wore fur coats, treated people in the bar, knew the vice cops by their first name. Couldn't arrest them. What harm did they do? Hi, Irv. What's with the press saying Obama is so great because he's admitting he screwed up? I've heard this from commentators on TV and a lot over the last day or two. Should they be critical that he did screw up instead of lauding him for his apologizing? You're absolutely Abby right. He wasn't hired to screw up. And as I've said before, I want Sarah Palin, who was criticized by the press. I want them to criticize Barack Obama. I want them to criticize anybody in the Democrat administration, especially that crazy lady Nancy Pelosi, who I can't stand, and Harry, I think I'm breathing Reed. You're absolutely right. And I said earlier in the program, we didn't hire you, Mr. Obama, to screw up. We just got rid of a guy for 8 years that screwed up. The only difference is he never admitted it. So the press is making a big deal over the fact that the president admitted he screwed up. Is this going to be the next 4 years every time something goes awry? That Barack Obama is going on television? Well, I'll tell you, in my eloquent dialogue, I think I screwed up. You're absolutely right. Let us be as critical as the Democrat administration as we were to the Bush administration. Let's put their feet to the fire. Until we get a political party in Washington, D.C., and people with some moral fiber and get rid of those bums like Barney Frank and other people who sat idly by while this country was going down the tube, then maybe we'll have some honest government. But you're absolutely right, and I think the press is afraid to challenge our president. I don't mean challenging the president and the Democrats or liberals the way the bloviators do. I mean with real facts, unbiased, present the facts, and say this is the truth, this is what's happening. You make up your own mind, and then take whatever action you feel responsible for. We have a means of getting people out of office, and that is called voting. But we have got to get a far more educated voting population than we have. This last election, all Democrats and all Republicans should have written none of the above. The destruction of this country was the ignorance of the voters in the last election, and the ignorance of both parties to give us candidates that were not qualified to be the President or Vice President of the United States in these trying times. So don't look for any cross the aisle shaking hands with the Republicans, because the Republicans are on a roll right now, and they don't give a damn whether this country goes down the tube or not, as long as they can prove that Barack Obama was unqualified to be the President of the United States. The bloviators on television, the Rush Limbaughs, the Michael Medvedes, the Mike Gallaghers, they don't give a damn about this country. They only give a damn about making money from bloviating on radio and television, the O'Reillys, making money. They'll be damned about the country. Because if we lived in the country, never concerned about it, their criticism of this administration would be done totally different. You can criticize, and they deserve to be criticized, but not in the way they're doing it. No way. The fact is that with all the bloviators on television, 20 million listeners, 10 million listeners, the Republicans lost. And they were the voice of the Republican Party. Even to the point where Rush Limbaugh today has been accused of being the voice of the Republican Party, and I agree. All during the Clinton administration, during the Bush administration, he was the voice of the Republican Party. The Republican Party politicians are scared out of their pants if Rush Limbaugh mentions their name. Yes, Rush, you've got the right of freedom of speech, but we've got such damn cowards that are afraid to say anything about you or criticize you when you're wrong. They wet themselves at the mere mention of your name. That's America. These are the politicians that I voted for, both Democrats and Republicans. These are the people that tell us how they're going to spend our money. Getting back to the comment of what's going to happen to this country, we are going to go broke, belly up. No question about it. I predicted that under the Barack Obama administration, or whether or not John McCain and Sarah Palin won, that the stock market will go to 6,500 before this administration is over. It was below 8,000 this week. It's vacillating up and down and up and down. There is no way out. The Republicans don't have an answer. The Democrats don't have an answer. You've got false money in this country, creating a false economy with a false government. And until we have a viable currency that is made up of real money, backed by the United States government, which is worth trillions of dollars, America's assets, you're going to go broke. Take my word for it. You better hang on to your shorts. And you know my theory. I'm not going to give you my financial advice. That's my business. You listen to all of these guys that knew so much about finances that very few of them can be proud of the portfolios that they manage. Isn't that amazing? Once again, my conspiracy theory for tonight is how much information was destroyed in computers, in laptops, in briefcases, in cell phones, in Blackberries when the World Trade Center came down. And is that really what triggered this world economic mess? That was a destruction of unbelievable proportion where information was stored. Were there backup systems 100 miles away? I don't know. I don't know what information was in that World Trade Center. Neither do you. You think we'll ever find out? I'm Irv Homer. Just something for you to think about. Once again, let me remind you that there is an email address called irvhomerradio@live.com. It has got nothing to do with me. Nothing that is generated from there in reference to me or my son Ron has any credibility whatsoever. I do not know whose email this address is. I haven't been able to find out. But if it continues, there could be some legal ramifications against whoever put this thing up. Once again, we've been broadcasting from irvhomer.com. Website is www.irvhomer.com. My email address is evilirv@irvhomer.com. And once again, you can check RGH Computer Services at www.rghsystems.net. I'm Irv Homer, and I ain't got nothing more to say tonight.